Hi, Benson. Thank you for coming today. So my name is Johan from the core team of Y University. So today, just wanted to ask you a few questions about coming from a poly background to going to uni in the US. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? What school you were from, what school you're currently in, and what you're majoring in?
Yep. Hello, my name is Benson. I went to Nanyang Poly for my pre-university education, where I majored in business studies. So after Nanyang, I was in the army for 2 years, where I started applying for colleges. And right now, I'm in Cornell University pursuing computer science. But I didn't apply to Cornell as a CS major. I applied to another major, which I can talk about later. And right now, I'm in CS because I switched from that major to CS after my first year in college.
Um, can you tell us a little bit more about your whole application journey, how you even got started thinking about uni in the first place, when you got started
Um,
thinking about uni, and
yeah.
why choosing to go to the US?
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because I mean, there are many reasons why I decided to go to the US. I would say the most uh, maybe significant reason would be realizing that I could not go out to work immediately after poly. Because in my final year of poly, I was doing a 6 month internship in Shanghai, and I was there with like a couple of poly friends, and I saw how many of them were like thriving at their workplace. Because one of my friend, she was doing media and I think mass comm in Nian, and she was so good with like software. She was so good at digital marketing, and I felt that she had real skills to contribute to the workforce. Whereas for me, I was from business studies, so I didn't really have any like hard skills to contribute, because in business we pretty much learn like what someone would learn from a business program in university, but like a more watered
Mm.
down version. So you learn things like business model canvas, like the five porters forces of analysis. So those are really useful frameworks of thinking, but you can't really like do Photoshop or Excel or whatever. So I just felt like I didn't have enough skills to go to the workforce right away. And at the
Mm.
time I was thinking, um, because I also had a lot of friends who are going to university like NUS or NTU, and they were telling me how business programs in NTU and US were very similar to the business program in Poly. So at the time, I was just thinking if I should even go to university, because I didn't want to spend another 4 years of my time repeating the same things that I've learned in Poly.
Right. I
But
see.
at the same time, I didn't feel like I could go out to the workforce right away and start working. So that was my dilemma then. And then I figured out that, okay, if I didn't have enough skills to go out to the workforce right now, then I should probably do what I'm best at that time. And that was studying. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a university. And if I were to go to a university, where should I go, right? And then I was in Shanghai then, and I really enjoyed living overseas alone. So I was thinking, okay, maybe if I choose to go to university, I would just apply to the best universities in the world. And I started Googling, okay, best business program in the world. And the first option that came up was Wharton from University of Pennsylvania. So that's how
Right.
it started my entire application process. So I went in the application process thinking that I would apply to Wharton, and throughout the application process, because of the essays you have to write, you started reflecting about the things you have done before, and I started
Mm.
applying to other majors like industrial and labor relations from Cornell, and maybe arts and science or sociology majors from the College of Arts and Sciences in other universities. So that's how it started.
Right. I see. That's interesting. So, um, just curious, coming from business studies in Nanyang Poly,
Yeah.
could you do something more technical in uni, like computer science
Uh.
in Singapore?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like in
I
NUS
mean,
and NTU.
yeah, yeah. So for Singapore universities, as long as you are the top 10% in your poly cohort, you get to choose any other majors that you want to major in. But if you're not in the top 10%, I'm not too sure about that. But I think it might be harder, or you might just have to apply to your same field of studies. But because I was at the top 10% in poly, I could
Mm.
apply to majors like computer science, whatever. Yeah, so I applied to CS in NUS and NTU, and I was accepted to the both to the programs for both universities, because my GPA allowed me to apply to other fields that are not related to business.
Mm, right. So you applying to the US, you were also thinking of switching to something more technical towards the end. Am I right to say that?
I wasn't thinking about applying and then switching right away. I was just thinking about applying to a major that I know would get me into the school. And because of the flexibility of a US curriculum, I knew that I would take technical courses along the way
Mm,
as well. So that was my plan at first. And after I got into Cornell, I started taking classes from that major, from CS. And it was then that I realized that there's an opportunity to switch. And it was quite an easy opportunity to switch. So I made a switch after thinking about it for maybe a semester.
right, I see. Cool. So, you applying to university, this was in your last year of poly or first year of NS?
It was first year of NS.
First year of NS. So your internship in Shanghai was in the last year of poly lah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was just part of the mandatory internship program that all poly students have to go through. But I went overseas instead of doing my internship locally.
That's cool. So you got into NUS, CS, NTU CS, as well as some US unis. So why
Mhm.
did you ultimately choose Cornell?
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I think there are many reasons to choose Cornell. But at that point in time, I was just like really trying my luck at applying to US universities. So I just picked like the best one that offered me a
Mm,
position. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, if you want to know, in retrospect, I think Cornell is a good place to go to because it is such a intellectually vibrant university. Like I
mm-hmm,
feel like whatever that you want to study here, there's someone out there who's already doing it, and the
mm,
barrier of entry to join their labs and to join these like world class researchers to do the fields that they are passionate about is relatively low compared to other places or maybe like just the industry, right? So what I'm saying is you don't really need a lot of prerequisite classes to get into those labs. So for example, right now I'm in a space systems lab where I'll be launching satellites at the end of this year. And I
wow.
didn't even have any astronomy background going in. I mean, I just took a geology class. I only took like one intro level geology class. And I mean, that introduced me to the field of geology, right? So after that class, the professor was telling me the other classes that I could take. And the next class that I jumped to was like a grad level astronomy class. And that got me even more interested in astronomy and how I could apply my CS skills into the field of astronomy. And that's how I finally managed to wiggle my way into that lab to launch satellites.
Awesome.
So the barrier of entry is really low. Like I have to admit that I still know nothing about astronomy or building satellites as compared to the students who are really working there, but they're just so willing to like help an undergrad explore their field of interest. Yeah, and apart from the satellite labs, I've joined like other labs in labor research or in ecology research. So I think it's a really wonderful opportunity to just explore and I mean just explore with like no like relatively little cost, right? And you could just join the lab. If you don't like it, just leave the lab, and at least you know that you're not that interested in the high level stuff of that field. So I would say that's the biggest value I see from maybe a university education. Yeah, so I don't regret applying. I mean, of course, I don't regret applying to universities, but I mean, I thought about not going to university once, and
Mm,
looking back, I think it's a good idea to go to university. Yeah.
mm. So this going to labs thing, this lab program, I'm just curious. Is this exclusive to Cornell? Because I haven't really heard of a lot of, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's exclusive to Cornell. As long as the university that you're applying to is a research university with a strong focus on undergrad research, then you'd probably be yeah, it'd probably be pretty easy to join labs in your school. Yeah, but it also depends on the focus of your university, like the research focus of your university. So in
Mm,
Cornell, the astronomy department is pretty good. The CS department is pretty good. So if you want to work on the most like cutting edge stuff, then in astronomy, then Cornell is probably a pretty good option because a lot of professors there they are involved in real NASA projects, and so the things that you do, they're like either sponsored by NASA or just NASA projects itself, right? So I have one Singaporean friend. He was from RI, and
mm,
basically he's so smart. Yeah, he's the smartest guy that I've seen. Even in Cornell, I wouldn't say like in like Singapore or whatever, but in Cornell he's really pretty smart, right? And he's a sophomore like me, but he's really taking those grad classes. And I think if he wants to graduate within 2.5 years, he can do that, right? So basically, his schedule right now is just a couple of grad classes and two like full time research or part time research. Yeah, so he's basically his schedule is basically like a PhD student schedule. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
I
and
see.
well, yeah, and the reason why I
Mm,
talked about this is because he's optimizing the camera for a Mars orbital camera. You know the rover on Mars?
mm,
Yeah, the Mars
yeah.
rover. Yeah, so he's optimizing the images from that camera. It's so cool. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. Okay. Wait.
it's so
So is
cool.
he
Yeah,
changing like certain specifications directly on the rover, or is it he gets the image back and then he optimizes it?
I'm not sure actually. Yeah, but that's what he told me. He does like computer vision stuff for the rover, and the professor that he's working with, I'm taking a class like the astronomy class that I was talking about with this professor, and that guy is so cool. That guy is like very involved in NASA projects, and he'll be serving as one of the panelists for the next decadal survey. So for a decadal survey, all the astronomers, the planetary scientists will come together, and then they will talk about the plans for the next 10 years, right? So what's like the billion-dollar flagship event that, sorry, billion-dollar flagship mission that they want to like prioritize for the next 10 years. The current one is the Europa Clipper, right? So they would just be sending like a satellite to Europa, and Europa is one of Jupiter's moon. And the purpose of sending that satellite there is to search for life, like alien life, right? So that's this decade. The next decade, they have another priority. So he's like one of the panelists to decide which mission to prioritize. Yeah, so I think you can really meet super cool people here, and the barrier of entry to join their labs are really, really very low, right? They don't expect you to come in with any experience. As long as you're willing to learn, you can join. So I think that's the
Hmm.
biggest thing that I've taken away from my 2 years here so far.
Have you considered double majoring in astronomy or in?
Oh, uh, yeah, I've considered double majoring, but I think the requirements are too hard for me to fulfill within 4 years. Yeah, so
Oh,
for
I see.
astronomy, you would have to take like physics classes and then like maybe chemistry classes and a lot of other requirements. So I'm doing CS now, and the workload is really pretty heavy. So I think it would be hard for me to double major in astronomy. But I don't think there's a need to anyway, because I'm not going to grad school in astronomy or whatever. I'm just doing it as a side interest. And also I'm approaching it
Right.
from a CS perspective. So it doesn't really, I mean, I think this grad class that I'm taking right now has taught me enough to communicate with planetary scientists. And if I'm just
Hmm.
working as an engineer in the space lab, then I think I should probably take more engineering classes instead of astronomy classes. Yeah.
Right. I see. I see. That makes a lot of sense. Here's an interesting question. Why do you think Cornell chose you?
Oh,
Hmm.
okay. So I'll talk about the major that I applied to, right? So I applied to industrial and labor relations. It's a pretty niche major, right? It's one of the only labor related majors in the United States. Okay.
Hmm.
And I mean, when I applied, of course, I was just putting my best foot forward, talking about the experience, my experiences, the things that I've done before related to that major. But
Hmm.
after I like attended classes in Cornell, taking classes from that major, I realized why they really wanted me there, and that is because I feel like the people in that major, the demographic of people that they want to help is basically like my demographic, right? Because for the industrial and labor relations, people always talk
Hmm.
about advocacy, talking about labor rights, human rights, but most people in
Hmm.
that major, they want to be lawyers, right? They are there for the pre-law program. And
Hmm.
most of them come from pretty wealthy backgrounds, pretty wealthy family. They are white, I mean, the majority race in America, and they all probably come from New York City. And a lot of my friends from that major, their parents are lawyers themselves. So they haven't really experienced life as a low income worker, maybe. Yeah, you just haven't really communicated with low income workers. But when I was in Shanghai, my internship was basically having me to negotiate or not negotiate, having me to resolve conflicts between factory managers and factory workers,
Oh,
right?
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I was just mediating conflicts between them, and then I was honestly just getting the workers to trust me. And once they trust me enough, they start telling me about all their problems in their factories, right? And it ranges from like depression to suicide to like sexual violations, whatever. And then I report all these results. I collect these results and report them to the brands that they were supplying to. So that was part of an effort to make supply chains more transparent, and also
mm,
to help us get like real time information on supply chains. And the reason for doing that is because brands are always talking about supply chain transparency, how they want to humanize the supply chain, but it's hard to do so because they don't have much data on factories, or at least they don't have accurate real time data on factories, right? So all they've been relying on have been audits, and audits are so useless, right? So auditors, they just go into the factory, and
mm,
the factories are so used to audits, right? So they just
yeah,
send like their best two workers out and answer questions, tell the auditors what they want to hear, and then they leave. And the brands would think that the workers are doing fine because the best two workers that the factory handpicked for these auditors answer questions in the way that they want them to. Right. Yeah.
mm,
So that's basically the entire problem with the industry,
mm,
and it's one of the things that IRR was doing. So there was like a great fit in the things that I did in my internship and the things that IRR has to offer. And
mm,
secondly, I mean, I talked about them, the demographic. So they want to help like low income workers and stuff. And my parents are low income workers, so in
oh,
class I
okay,
felt like I could really contribute that perspective. And
mm,
because like when people talk about DEI, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, they talked
mm,
about, I don't know, like advocating rights for workers in the workplace. They don't really know what low income people are thinking, and a lot of them just came off as hypocritical. Like a lot of Honestly, I feel like a lot of people in America, they advocate for issues that they might not necessarily fully understand, right? They
mm,
say that they want to help low income workers in China, but none of them have interacted with low income workers in China, right? They
mm,
think that low income workers in China want short hours, want more pay. But from my interactions with low income workers in China, they just want to, they just want a job, right? They just want to do more work, right? They don't mind working long hours as long as they get paid. So it's not really about getting more pay or working short hours. They'll hate to work short hours. They want to work longer hours. Yeah. So basically, it's my experience in this field that made me realize that I have a lot to contribute in classroom discussions when I was there. I think that's why they
right.
wanted me. Yeah.
So you basically offered like a perspective that they want, right? A unique perspective, I guess. And from what I'm hearing, I guess poly has helped this a lot in the sense that you were it was because of poly in the first place that you went for this internship, and then you could ultimately collate your experiences
Mm.
for the uni apps. So I was just wondering, um, what do you think are the differences between a poly student applying to uh, uni in the US versus a JC student? And how do you think a poly student can maximize
Mm.
his chances of getting in?
Yeah. I think, mm, the biggest difference I can think of
Mm,
is that for JC students, JCs are sending hundreds of students to US universities every year. So the admissions officer would know the type of JC students that they are accepting. So when they look at a bunch of JC students, right, they would know which JC student is better and which, I'm just like assuming, right, they would know which JC student is better and which one would fit into their university more based on whatever statistics that they've seen for the past 10 years or whatever, right? But for a
mm,
poly student, I think only a handful apply to US universities each year. I don't really know the stats, but at least when I was applying, no one else in Nanyang Poly was applying
mm,
to US
mm,
to American universities. So I think the biggest problem is when an admissions officer look at my statistics, when they look at my transcript, they wouldn't know if I'm going to be a good student in Cornell or like a bad student in Cornell. They wouldn't know how to compare me with JC students, because I think
mm.
from what I heard, for international admissions, right, they're not really comparing you to American students. They're comparing you to students within Singapore or within like the region that they
Yeah.
are considering, right? So, my competition would be like the other students in Singapore who are applying. So, I think one disadvantage would be that admissions officers might find it hard to really benchmark like a poly student as compared to a JC student. And this is why I think taking a standardized test is so important because, and maybe submitting our O level results. right? Because with a standardized test, they know exactly where you are academically, right? So
Mm,
that just
mm,
gives them another data point to compare you with other JC students.
mm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I see. And how about like using, because from my knowledge, in poly you have a lot more freedom to take up extracurricular activities and internships.
Mm.
So would it be possible for a poly student to use that to their advantage then?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, but I don't think that's such a unique advantage, because a lot of JC people I know in Cornell, they took up like really cool extracurriculars as well, right? Some of them has done research. I mean, you would know, you did research at NUS, right? Yeah, some of them have done like
Oh
research
yeah.
at Singapore universities, right? Many of them have like really cool internships coming in. So I wouldn't say internship is like a wow factor, right? Because JC students can do internships as well. But I mean, my internship was more appealing to the admissions officer because it was really related to the major that I was applying to, right? So I think it's not really about whether you have an internship, but whether your internship has anything to do with the major that you want to apply to, right? So I don't
Mm,
think that's such a unique factor for poly students. And for extracurriculars, yeah, I do think that we have more extracurriculars. But then again, I didn't really talk about my extracurriculars in my application. So when I was in poly, right, I was just joining like those social life extracurriculars. So I was
mm,
just leading orientation camps, yeah, doing like non-academic stuff, right? Just orientation camps, organizing events for people in my business schools.
mm,
And I didn't really find it particularly relevant to my application, so I just wrote it in my extracurricular section, and I didn't really elaborate on them in my essays. So I don't think my extracurriculars in poly helped me that much either. Yeah, I think what really helped me was the internship that I did, and was
right.
because of
Mm,
how related it was to my major.
okay, I see. Um, we actually put out an IG story to
Oh,
our
really?
junior, and
Yeah.
yeah, to ask them whether they have any questions. And one of the more interesting questions we got is, are there particular poly courses that are more favorable to these US unis?
Mm. Yeah,
Mm,
honestly, I don't know, right? But last year I was helping like a Nanyang poly student to apply to
mm,
US universities, and it was his second year applying. And I knew that
okay.
his first year applying, he applied to an engineering major in Cornell, and he didn't get accepted. So he emailed the admissions officer and asked why he didn't get accepted. And
Mm,
surprisingly, the admissions officer replied him, and the admissions officer said he didn't get accepted because he didn't have the liberal arts foundation that they are looking for in applicants. And I
mm,
thought it was quite weird because it's not like he applied for the liberal arts college, right? He applied to the engineering college. And
mm,
in Nanyang Poly, for his course, I think it was information technology or something, his transcript
mm,
was basically all technical classes. Yeah, so they said he was lacking in those class options. Yeah. So I mean that might be something to consider, but I'm not really sure what admissions officers are looking for in terms of classes. And it's probably something that you don't have to worry about if you're already in poly, or if you're already graduated poly, because you can't really change anything about your transcript, right? And I don't think there's much flexibility in choosing like the classes that you can take in poly. So it's more like you choose a course that you want to go to, and then you
mm,
just take the classes that are prescribed to you. Yeah. So
mm,
the answer is I don't know, but honestly, I mean it's useless to think about this because you can't really change anything about classes. But
mm,
probably one advice that I could give is for poly students is to maybe have more control over your application, because for JC students I know that you guys only have like eight spots, right? You can only apply to eight US universities.
I think it depends on the school. Some allow like up to 15. Yeah.
Oh wait, 15 is pretty good, yeah. But
Mm,
I don't know where I heard it from, but some people can only apply to eight universities. I think it was UWC. So I think that would be very tricky because I mean American college admissions is like, and I feel like it's like a lottery, right? It's a game of chance. So the
mm,
more you apply, the higher chance you have of getting in, right? So I mean, poly students don't have that limit. So if you can, just apply to as many as possible. And the other one is to get like good recommendation letters, because you know how in your application they want you to submit your counselor recommendation letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
And in US high schools, a counselor is someone who would like be with you throughout your academic journey for like your 3 years or 4 years in high school.
Mm.
But I mean, at least in poly, the counselor is just like a career counselor. Like you go there when you need career help. Yeah, I have
Same
never.
for JC. Yeah,
Huh? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it'll be the same for JC. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Mm.
I didn't even I've never met my career advisor once until I started applying for colleges. So obviously she couldn't write anything about me, and I wouldn't want her to write anything about me because she
Right.
doesn't know me at all, right? So what I did was I got someone else to write on behalf of her, and I got
Mm.
her to submit it, right? So that
Mm.
someone else I got was this program manager of a scholarship program that I was in, and
Mm.
I mean I interacted with him pretty frequently for in my 3 years in poly, and I just got him to write my letter and then asked the college counselor to submit his letter on his behalf. So that was for the counselor's recommendation portion, and for the teacher's recommendation, I think the best thing that you can do is to tell the teachers exactly what US universities are looking for in a recommendation letter, because
Mm.
I mean, I feel like a lot of poly lecturers, they are not used to writing recommendations, right? Because they don't need to. A lot of people, they're applying to local universities and they don't need a recommendation. Even if they
Mm.
do, the recommendations that Singapore universities are looking for are pretty different from what an
Right.
American university is
Mm.
looking for. So I mean, when I was applying, I just did a lot of research on what type of letters that they're looking for, and then I just told the teachers like, okay, just talk about my classroom interactions with you, talk about whether you think I'm like the best student you have seen in 10 years or something like this. So just give them an idea of what American universities want to see in a letter, so that they can
Mm.
write according to your expectations. If
Mm.
otherwise, they would just be writing, "Oh, Benson has been very active in extracurriculars on campus," but they don't care about that. I mean, American colleges don't care about that in a recommendation letter, because you'd be writing that in your extracurricular portion.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess one big difference between JC and Poly, applying from JC and Poly is for Poly students, you need a lot more ownership over the whole application process, and you need to do your own research lah. So you need to, in some sense, you are the one who needs to tell the college counselor what to do, right? So
yeah,
so how did you navigate this process yourself?
yeah.
Did you
Honestly,
have any help
yeah,
along the way?
it might seem like a bad thing that we need to take more ownership, but to me, I think I mean, it was like a big advantage that I have, because I
Mm.
really
Mm.
have control over all aspects of my application. So I just, like, for example, I asked my career counselor, because I knew that she had to fill up a form for the school, right? And honestly, I didn't trust her enough to fill up according to my expectations. So I asked her,
Mm.
so what kind of questions are these schools asking you? And she said, oh, they're just asking me to fill up like a profile of the school, like the percentage of people who go to university, the average GPA or whatever. So, so I mean, of course, I trust her with these stats, and I didn't ask her to tell me any of those stats, right? Maybe other
Mm.
than my class ranking, because they ask counselors to fill up your class ranking, but in poly we don't
Mm.
really like rank students. So I
Mm.
just asked her what she filled up, right? So she said, "Oh, I put you as the top 10 to top 5%." So I wasn't even in the top 5% of poly. I was just like from 5 to 10, right? So
Oh.
that's when I knew, yeah, I wasn't at the top in Nyan Poly when I applied to these colleges, yeah. And then for teachers' recommendations, I mean, they didn't really know what to write. So I mean, they didn't know how to write in a way that American universities would want. So just tell them really directly, just talk about your interactions with me in class. Don't talk about my CCAs at all. Um, say things like, I think Benson is like the X student in 10 years or something, if you think that is true. Yeah, something like this. Because, I mean, if you Google, you probably see a lot of examples of how a good recommendation should look like for American universities. So just think about all those. Think about, uh, yeah, just give your teachers a general framework of what they can write about you, so that they won't write things that are not meant for American universities. Right. So that's another portion that I had control over. And lastly, I mean, essays, right? Essays. Everyone needs help with essays, like even JC students. So just get as much help as you can. and definitely get people to read through your essay and yeah, and give you like feedbacks on your essay. And you can easily do it through, I mean, maybe asking. I would say asking a college counselor, but my college counselor gave me a really bad advice on my essay. So just ask people who have been through the admissions process,
Yeah, it
and
really depends.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe reach out to people on LinkedIn. Yeah, and honestly, I don't think it's a poly problem because I was talking to this other guy in Cornell. He told me that his admissions counselor told him that he was not good enough to apply to Ivy League universities. And that was, I think his IB score was like, I know you know him, right? Yeah, he's the guy that recommended me to you.
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So that guy, I can't remember what his IB score was, but I think he said his IB score wasn't as high as everyone else. So his admissions counselor was, I mean, his college counselor was saying, his career counselor was saying, how he should just not apply to top universities because it's impractical for him to do so. Something along that line. Yeah, but I
Right.
mean, he applied either way, and he did well. And for my
Mm.
case, I mean, my counselor didn't really have faith in me as well. She was like, "Oh, you know, these top universities, they need people with like perfect GPAs, perfect extracurriculars." But I mean, obviously, my GPA was not perfect, right? I was not even at the top 5%, and that
Mm.
was honestly so bad because I entered Ngee Poly with probably the best O level score, whatever. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, probably the best O level score. I mean, I don't know the stats, but I got like uh I got the best score that O level students can get. So I probably entered with the best O level score, but I
Right.
didn't graduate with like the best poly score. I applied with, I mean, I entered with the best score or like maybe one of the better scores among poly students, but I didn't leave with the best GPA, right? And I also submitted my O levels to the admissions officer, so they would probably know that I didn't do too well. I mean, if you're just
Right.
comparing between like your your secondary school and poly ranking, obviously I didn't do too well in poly. Right. So my admissions officer, I mean my college counselor was saying, you should keep your expectations low, you should be more practical about your choices. And you should probably like look up a community college or state schools. That's exactly what she said to me. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, I want to swear, but I was just thinking, whatever, I'm not going to ask you for advice because if you're not going to believe in me, how am I going to trust that
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
you will help
Yeah.
me? And if you don't even believe in me, how are you going to help me make the admissions officer believe in me? Right? So I was just doing my own research, reaching out to people who could help me. And I made use of their advice more than my college counselor advice.
So I had this previous Q&A with another senior who's in NYU. He was from TP, and he told me that he really had to spend a lot of time contextualizing his grades. So, do you have a similar experience?
Oh, what do you mean by contextualizing though?
Because US universities, they're not used to the poly GPA system. So,
Mm.
like, you really have to explain like what like a 3.8 GPA means, or yeah,
Oh,
just explain the background to your
yeah,
academics,
yeah,
or
yeah.
maybe like even why you chose poly in the first place.
Oh, yeah. I did talk about why I chose poly, but I didn't contextualize my grade because I mean I knew from the I mean, my career counselor that I was at the top 10 to 5 to 10%. Yeah, so I think
Mm,
I mean that's enough to
right.
contextualize. I think, right?
I
Because
guess.
if I were to
Mm,
explain like every beast I've gotten in poly, then that would seem a bit, I don't know, a bit
mm,
weird, right? Like you're
mm,
just compensating for not gonna be. But I just focus my attention on other aspects
right.
of my education. Yeah, and also my
So,
SAT. So, huh?
sorry, you were saying your SAT.
Yeah, my SAT was fine. Like, it was within the median score of most schools that I'm applying to. So I think it was
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm. Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess standardized testing really helps in that sense to
yeah,
contextualize your intellectual ability at least.
oh, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, no matter how you contextualize your poly grades, it's what you say, right? But if you take a standardized test, they'll
Mm,
immediately
mm,
know, like if you get a 1550, they'll know, okay, 1550, you got like a 3.9 in poly and you got 1550. Okay, so maybe 1550 is similar to 3.9. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, but I
mm,
mean, if you contextualize it yourself, it sounds like you're just explaining why you didn't do so well in school. Unless you get every A for everything, right? But I mean, getting A for everything might not look as impressive as you think it might be because I mean they don't really know what the poly standard is, so they might think
Mm,
there's like inflation, great inflation or whatever. So
mm,
yeah, but I did write about why I chose poly though, because
mm,
in the additional info of the college app with no comment app
mm,
section,
right. Mm,
I was saying how like what made me choose poly and then what I learned in poly, like really briefly, what made me choose poly, what I learned, and why I'm applying to US universities from poly, right? Because going
mm,
from
right.
secondary school to poly with my score was pretty unconventional, and applying to US universities from poly was also pretty unconventional. So I just made sure to
Mm,
apply like my thought process in these two relatively large stage of life. Yeah,
mm, right. So I'm just curious, why did you choose poly?
yeah. Honestly, I just wanted to have fun. Wait, let me think of what I wrote for my application. Maybe that's more of value to you.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, I think I remember what I wrote, and it's one of the reasons as well. I mean, to put it bluntly, it's just to have fun, right? But
Mm,
I wrote in my application that uh, in primary school and secondary school, I was in a more like academically rigorous environment, right?
mm,
And I didn't really have a lot of time to pursue things that I like. I didn't really have time to pick up soft skills to learn how to talk to people. And I was just basically like a nerd in primary school and secondary school with zero soft skills at all. Like I didn't know how to talk to people at all. I was basically a very loser in primary school and secondary school. Right. So after secondary school, I was thinking, should I spend another 2 years of my life preparing for another national exam? Or should I just make use of these like golden period teenage years to really have as much fun as I can? Right. So I mean that's the real reason why I went to poly. And that was because I wanted to meet new people. I wanted to learn how to talk to people from all walks of life. And
mm,
when I went to open house, the vibe was just so different. Right. I went to JC open house and the tour guides there didn't look like they wanted to be there. Yeah, I mean they looked tired. They looked like they didn't really know how to address like a group of people. They were talking about the track, the swimming pool, whatever. I don't know. They just didn't seem that interested in being there. But when I went to Young Poly's open house, it was so energetic, right? Everyone was so enthusiastic, and people really looked like they were happy to be there. And when I was on like the tours, the bus tours and everything, I thought they
mm,
were really well spoken. They were really good at selling the school. I'm just thinking I want to be like when I look at both types of students I see at the open house, I just thought like I wanted to learn how to be more extroverted. Right. I wanted to learn how
mm,
to like connect with people,
right.
talk to people.
Mm,
And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I went to poly. I think in my writing I said something like this as well. I just wanted to
mm,
like explore, learn how to talk to people, be more extroverted. Yeah, basically be cooler lah, because I just felt like I wasn't doing anything other than studying for my first few years of education.
mm, mm,
And when I could like choose whether to go to poly or JC, then I decided to choose a place that was best suited for that stage of life, right? Best suited for my goals at that stage of life. So at
mm,
the time, all I wanted was to be more extroverted. I wanted to learn how to talk to people.
right.
So
Mm,
into poly, I thought would help me do that. And at this stage of life, like when I was applying to university, my goals were just to like go into like the best academic environment that I could go to, right?
mm,
And it kind of like going back to the academic environment. Because if you think about it, if I were to go to a JC at that time, I think the best JC that I could go to was ACSI, like based on
mm,
the cutoff at that year, right?
right.
So I'll probably be surrounded by a lot of people who are also applying to US universities, and I might want to apply to US universities as well.
Mm,
Right. But if I were to apply from there, then it wouldn't be such an unconventional route, right? So from a good secondary school to a good JC, and then to American universities. But because I went through another route, so I had a lot of like interesting stories to share. Like, what were the motivations that made me choose to pivot when I could pivot out of that rat race, if you would say. So I just made sure to explain that properly to the admissions officer so that they would know like my motivations for doing the things I'm doing.
wow, you have a really interesting story, I must say.
Yeah.
how do you find Cornell? How other than your astronomy lab,
Yeah,
um, and your interesting courses, are there any other activities that you're involved in? How was the transition actually from poly
yeah,
to uni? Yeah.
the transition. So for me, I did a business program in poly. So when I was
Mm,
taking my IR classes, the industrial and labor relations classes, I didn't think it was too difficult because, I mean, firstly, a lot of things I've first-hand experience in, like in the factories, my experience
mm,
just growing up, everything was very related. So I didn't think that it was too difficult for me to handle, just because I came in with a lot of experience in that field. But because of that, I didn't think that the classes were that value adding to my educational journey. Because a lot of things that they have discussed, I've thought about them maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, right? And there was this one time a professor was talking about his research on the supply chains. And I
mm,
just went up to him and I asked him, I think the things that you're discussing right now, isn't it kind of outdated? Like, are we not thinking about this other issue right now? And he was like, oh yeah, right. That's like my current like research focus. And then we started talking about his research focus. And the things that he's doing were the things that I did in my internship like 3 years ago. And I'm not
oh,
saying that what he's doing is outdated. What he's doing is definitely still relevant. But
mm,
it just shows how slow the industry is moving. And I mean, maybe I think the main reason why I felt that I had to leave was because I didn't think that the issues that I want to solve in that field are issues that academics can solve, right? And so there's no
mm,
point in being in an academic environment to work with professors on their projects when I don't think that they are able to solve this issue that we are all trying to solve. And I asked the professor as well, like, what do you think must happen for this issue to be solved? And he said basically the government has to do something about it along that line. So he also didn't think that academics can solve this problem. He just thinks that we all we can do, like we can probably just like write a paper, give the government some suggestions on what to do, and it's ultimately up
mm,
to them if they want to implement those solutions. But he also don't think that academics have much power in like solving these issues that we were talking about. So I just didn't think that it would be a good use of my time to spend like 4 years here learning things that I already know. I'm not saying that I know all of it because obviously like learning labor relations in America is very America focused. You learn about
mm,
American laws, American policies, and a lot of people use this as a pre-law major. So obviously I'm
mm,
gonna learn like things that I'm not familiar with. But for the things that I'm interested in and I want to pursue, those are things that I really know. So I just didn't think it was a value add to my education. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to switch to another major that I have completely no interest completely no experience in.
oh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I started
right,
taking CS classes, and
mm,
I mean because I did business in poly, I didn't have the math and science background going in. So
mm,
catching up with math was really hard for me. And I mean I think till today I'm still struggling with like even the most foundational concepts of math. So I might be taking higher level math classes right now, like discrete math, linear algebra, whatever. But I mean, I could understand those, but it's built upon a very shaky foundation. So like when the professor showed me like triangles and stuff, and like he was telling me this angle and that angle. Now I was thinking like, wait, why is this angle like 30 degrees? And then I went to ask him. He was basically telling me it's like trigonometry or like Pythagorean theorem. So those
mm.
are things that I'm like still really shaky with,
A
and
bit
on this
rusty, lah,
stable
right?
foundation, yeah, I'm like learning more advanced things. So yeah, I think I'm still struggling with it till today, and that's because I didn't have that academic preparation in CS before coming to university. So,
Mm,
I mean, right now, I'm taking hard classes. I mean, hard CS classes are fine because I did like the basic CS class here. But for hard math classes, I'm still struggling with it. Yeah.
but you need to do the math classes to fulfill your requirements for
Yeah. Yeah.
CS.
Yeah. And funny enough, I'm thinking of majoring in math as well, even though my math
Oh,
foundation is so rocky. But
you
it's kind of.
enjoy the
Hmm?
classes. You enjoy the classes, the math
Yeah,
classes.
yeah, yeah. Honestly, I think taking math classes make me feel smarter. Like I would struggle throughout that class, right? But after that class, I mean, I don't
It's
have
like
to
the
learn 100%. No, not really. It's like I don't
oh,
have to learn 100% of that material, but even if I learn like just 60% of the material, right? I'm better than the person who didn't take that math class. Right? So for example, taking maybe intro linear algebra is the requirement for CS, right?
Mm,
I don't have to get an A to take advanced linear algebra, right? I can take advanced linear algebra with a B in intro linear algebra, but that wouldn't stop me from taking the advanced linear algebra, because after taking the advanced linear algebra, I would probably know more linear algebra than the person who got an A in intro linear algebra but didn't do anything to continue their journey in linear algebra.
mm,
So I mean that's
right.
generally my approach, right? To just take classes that I want to take, even if
Mm,
I'm not too prepared for it. I mean that's why I took the graduate level astronomy class with
mm,
little astronomy experience. And I was just taking it with a bunch of PhD students who know a lot about astronomy, who know a lot about geology. And I was just like following along, you know. But I mean, I feel like I learned a lot from that class. Even if I didn't learn 100% of the material, it's fine, because I still know enough to communicate with planetary scientists right now, because my classrooms are filled with planetary science PhD students. Yeah,
yeah, that's cool. So I guess if you're doing the same course or same field of study in uni as you did in poly, it'll probably be like a breeze for you. But if you're changing courses somewhat, then it'll be a bit more challenging. But doing the same course might be a bit, not really value adding to your
yeah,
like
yeah,
your academic journey, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're going to come to an American university, then you might as well
Mm.
make use of the flexibility that they offer you.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, exactly.
if you just want
Mm,
to keep in one course, then you might as well just study in the UK or study locally in Singapore. But if you're in America, then you might as well just take a bunch of random classes that interest you at an early stage of your academic career. Because a lot of people, they take it in their junior year, in their senior year, but I mean, by that time, they would just be taking those classes for fun. Even if they discover their immense passion for philosophy, they're not able to change their major drastically to philosophy. Right? But if you take it early on, you can kind of know like what type of field that you're interested in, so that you can really focus on that field in your last 2 years in college. At least that's my strategy so far. Yeah, and but I definitely see a lot of people taking it towards end of their classes, end of their 4 years here, just to fulfill some liberal arts requirements. That's another way to do it as well. But I just think it's a ways to just see as another
yeah.
requirement to field rather than a class to really help you explore your interests.
Yeah, I think everyone should really understand like why they're going to uni in the first place, right? Like what is the main reason they're going to uni? Like for I think poly to US unis in particular is a very unconventional path, because normally your education is like broad, right? Then you gradually get narrow and narrow into one field. But from
Yeah,
poly to US uni is kind of like you go narrow first and then you go broad again, right? And I
mm,
guess like for people who really know what they want to do in the future, or really just want to get out there and start working, then maybe going straight to work after poly, or going to NTU, NUS, or even UK universities to do a very
mm,
specialized degree, that really
mm.
makes sense. But for people that maybe you're not really sure whether the course you took in poly is the right one for you, then maybe going to US unis to explore other areas of study might be beneficial. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it definitely sounds right to put it that way. But at the same
Mm,
time, if you're in a nursing program in poly, right, it would
mm,
make no sense for you to apply to a computer science program in uni, right? So
mm.
you really have
Yeah.
to think of the strategy that you want to use going in, right? Because the most important thing is getting in. So once you get in, you can do whatever you want there, right? And for me, my strategy was applying to majors that I know I will get in because of the perspectives that I can contribute to class, right? And I mean, once I'm there,
Mm,
once I'm taking those classes, I mean, if I love those classes, then it would make a lot of sense for me to stay there, because I really have so much experience. Professors were inviting me to join their labs to do like research at a high level as a freshman. And I mean, I could very well just stay in that major and really do well in that major. And I know that I would be able to do well in that major. But I mean, coming to the US, another part of me was like wanting to explore academically. So I just took on the other path. And right now, I mean, honestly, I'm struggling with a lot of classes, especially math classes, because of the shaky foundation that, I mean,
mm,
the last time I took a math class was for O levels, A math, additional math.
mm.
So I'm just doing math classes on that A level A math knowledge, A math curriculum that I took 5 years ago. So it's still hard for me,
Wow.
yeah, definitely.
Mm,
But it really depends on your approach going in. And
mm,
I feel like one benefit of coming to a US university from poly is that you kind of have like a trial run at university in poly, because even though
mm,
poly, I would say, is a watered down version of a Singapore university.
mm,
Yeah, because it's structured similarly to a university, and I
mm,
mean the things that you are taking is definitely a watered down version of university. So you kind of get an experience at approaching university. You get an experience at being graded on a GPA basis.
mm,
And I mean, there are a lot of extracurriculars for you to join as well. So it's really similar to a university, or a Singapore university at least. So you really have like one time to try out university.
mm,
And this second time, right, it's really up to you on how you want to approach it, right? Based on the lessons that you have learned in poly. So this is
mm,
another thing that I found it helpful. And obviously, like being a guy, being in army for 2 years, being away from school for 2 years, uh, I find that the break from school, or the break from an academically rigorous environment, or even like just experience in the workforce, right, really helped
mm,
me to understand why I'm going university for, and what I want to get out of
mm,
university.
yeah, mm,
And it's not just me as a poly student in Cornell, but a lot of my JC guy friends, they also feel the same, because they've been out of the academic environment before. They know
mm,
how society works, kind of. They know how people behave, how people
mm,
what people are motivated by, and because of that, they
mm,
could really focus on what they want to do in university. Yeah, but I find a lot of like American students, they I mean, they are obviously approaching universities, university very differently. And when I look at them, they remind me of my poly self. Like the way I approach poly is very similar to how they're approaching university right now. So there's definitely a
mm,
different in stage of life, and I mean, it can be limiting, because uh, it'll be hard for you to vibe with those like kids, right? Basically, but at the same time, you could probably
mm.
make more mature friends. You could probably make friends with like the PhD students or whatever. So it's really up to you to think about how you want to approach university.
So how are they approaching university? Like they're approaching it like a traditional sense without
Yeah.
really understanding why they're going for uni? Is that right to say?
You mean like who are they? Like who are you referring
Like the
to?
American students,
Oh,
the fresh high school grads.
oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of them they're just 18, right? And then when I was
Mm,
18, that was like the transition between secondary school and JC or poly.
mm,
So at that time, I was thinking, okay, maybe I just want to like have fun. I didn't care too much about my academics. I just wanted to join clubs that made me look cool, right? And I feel like that's
mm.
what a lot of people are doing now. They want to
Understand.
go to
Yeah.
parties. They want to go to frat parties. They want to drink like underage drinking, because the legal age in America is 21, right? So
Anyone?
they feel cool to drink below the age limit.
Mm,
They go to party. They pretend like they don't care about their academics, but honestly, I feel like everyone here cares about their academics. So to me, it's kind of dumb, because I just know that no matter how wild that they try to be, they'll never
mm,
really be really wild, because to even get to here in the first place, you must be someone who's able to thrive within the system, right?
mm,
And for people who thrive within the system, there's no way for you to just break it out of it right away and not care about your academics at all, right?
mm,
Unless you're having to lose. I mean, this is off topic, but this is also why I think the protests at Columbia is not organic. And I mean, I told this to my friends
mm,
before the news came out. So basically,
mm,
the news are saying that the protests at Columbia University uh, are led by professional protesters, right? Yeah,
mm,
they're not entirely student led. So basically, professional protesters are coming to Columbia University to teach their students how to protest, and like teach them how to escalate protests to make it into a big deal that we are seeing it today, right? But before this news came out, I was really telling my friends that there's no way that it's student led. I mean, there's no way that it's entirely student led, because people in top universities in the US, there are people who thrive within the system. So, I mean, obviously, US kids are raised very differently from Singapore kids. Of course, they believe in the right to protest, the freedom of speech. But when they're told that they're going to get expelled, when they're told that they're going to get suspended, a lot of people would stop, right? And
Mm,
honestly,
mm,
it would also be very hard to gain traction in your protest as well, because in the referendums that they are hosting,
mm,
there's only like a maybe 40% participation rate in the university, and
mm,
maybe out of that 40%, two-thirds of it would vote to divest from Israel, right? So
mm,
in many college campuses that we are seeing right now, uh, the protests are not gaining that much traction. I mean, we see on the news that they're gaining a lot of traction because they pick the universities that are really going crazy with the protests. But a lot of
mm.
universities, their protests are really small scale. There's not much traction at all. So those, I think,
Right.
are more organic protests, right? But for Colombia, I mean, before that, I was already telling my friends that it's not organic, and it's now proven in the news that they were they were encouraged by professional protesters. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I was saying this, but I was just saying American students, not even American students, like Singapore female students going to university right out of high school,
Mm,
they will be approaching universities very differently, maybe more similarly to Americans. Yeah, they would
mm.
want to like have
Understand.
fun, go to parties, drink. Yeah, but I mean, like the good thing is, uh, they are already trained enough to do work on autopilot mode. So I mean, at least that's what my friend told me. Yeah, she told me that she's really so good at doing work on autopilot mode without like struggling too hard with the material, so that she could spend a lot of time like doing like partying and whatever. Yeah. So I envy that though, because I mean when I want to do like a problem set, I take so long to do one problem set. But for her, I mean we are in different majors, right? But I mean
Mm,
she obviously have more background coming into she have more math background coming into the major, and so she's able to do her work relatively quickly, and she's super smart as well. So I mean, I think that's
right.
the thing about university, because many people come from different backgrounds,
Mm,
so you got to see how different people work. And yeah, I feel like I really learn a lot from the people around me.
mm.
Yeah.
Being in Cornell, like on that topic of who you're surrounded by, there's this common perception that Cornell has a bubble like environment, especially because it's in Ithaca, right? It's so far away from human civilization. What do you think about that?
uh, I think I think Cornell to me is like obviously my experience would differ from a lot of people, because firstly I'm in computer science, and computer science has a heavy workload no matter the university. Even if you go to NUS, people would know that CS students are always not around because they always have work to do, right?
Mm,
So I mean, Cornell to me is like a boot camp, I would say, because there's nothing else to do other than studying. Right? I mean, studying has really kept me occupied enough from doing like other things, but there's really nothing to
mm,
do other than studying. If you want to go to an American college to experience the frat party life, then you might as well go to like a college in the city, right? So that
mm,
you could really experience like the clubbing lifestyle. But to me, Cornell's like a boot camp, like a learning boot camp, where I really spent 4 years of my life just focusing on exploring academically. And
mm,
maybe to give you like an idea of how much people are studying. So basically, we have optional discussions on weekends, and we
mm,
also have like a full schedule of office hours on weekends. So like Monday to
mm.
Sunday, maybe except like Friday or something. Monday to Thursday, and then Saturday Sunday,
Well,
there will be at least like 6 hours of office hours every day. So there will be like TAs, like teaching assistants, hosting these office hours, and you could go to them whenever you need help with their work. So people are still working on weekends, and that's because no one lives off campus, right? Just living on top of a hill, everyone lives on campus. People come to campus to do work, right? The library would be packed on weekends, so people just
mm,
started like hosting exams, hosting office hours, hosting review sessions on weekends, and yeah, it just didn't feel like I mean, weekends are just days without classes, but you still have to. I mean, I still have to do work, and people are very willing
right.
to work on weekends. right? So I mean, to me, it's like it's really conducive for studying because there are no distractions. If I don't go to a party, I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But I feel like if I were to go to NYU, if I were to go to Columbia, uh, if I don't go out on weekends, I would feel like I'm missing out on city life. But
Right.
here, I know I'm not missing out because there's nothing else going on around campus anyway. And I mean, to me, I don't mind because I don't really like being in New York City. But
Mm.
uh, and I really love nature, right? So Cornell is surrounded by nature. We are in the Fingers Lake region. We have a really beautiful lake that we can see from campus. We have a lot of gorgeous waterfalls, just a lot of nature. Right? It's a very good place for people who are interested in nature, geology, right? So I really like being surrounded in this really peaceful environment and just really studying for my 4 years here. So, but I mean, it's definitely different. I know people who have tried to transfer out just because that they can't deal with the life of being trapped in
Right.
this
Lifestyle.
bubble.
Do you have any other tips
Mm.
that you want to share with poly students who are looking at US unis?
Yeah, I think ultimately we just have to believe in ourselves, right? We just have to believe that we are good enough to apply to these universities that we are applying to, because if we don't even think that we are good enough, we can't convince admissions officers that we are good enough. So I really believe in just being naive about your chances. I mean, I feel like
Mm.
everyone should be naively optimistic about their chances because if you think about it, applying to American colleges as an international student is really very hard by itself. So, I mean, not just poly students, everyone has a very little chance of getting in, right? So, I think what really helped me was that I was so naively optimistic about my chances. I was just thinking, of course, I'm going to get in, right? Why would they not accept me? And I approached my application with that mindset. And I think that helped me a lot because if I keep comparing myself with like someone else who's applying, like, well, this guy has a 4.0 GPA, I only have like a 3.9, right? So if that guy's applying to Harvard, then maybe I should apply to I don't know, to a community college like my career counselor advised me to. So that would be a bad move, right? So just believe in yourself and yeah, manifest it and be optimistic about your chances. I think most importantly, yeah, just think you're good enough. If you don't think you're good enough, it's very hard to convince anyone else that you're good enough. So that would
Well
be my
said, well said.
yeah.
And you are living proof that it can be done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ah,
I mean, I try not to come off as like I'm someone who has really succeeded from the process, and I'm like sitting on top of an ivory tower giving this advice because
mm,
honestly, I know it's a tough process, and I'm not saying that I'm like doing too well here either after getting in. Right, I'm struggling with my classes definitely. I mean, because of the reasons I shared
mm,
before, but ultimately it's about like how you want to approach this, right? Like I don't
mm,
have to get an A for all my classes. Right, I'm in college to explore academically, and as long as I'm doing that, uh, I would think that I've like done what I wanted to do in college. And I mean, like from the
mm,
labs I'm joining right now, they're all really pretty cool stuff and things that I wouldn't be able to do in Singapore. So
mm.
yeah, it's really how you want to approach it. And I feel like American universities might care less about grades than UK universities or Singapore universities.
Right.
So if
I
if yeah,
yeah.
so just make use of whatever story that you can tell to get in. Yeah.
Right. I guess this mindset of being naively optimistic need not only apply to college applications, that it can be, every other aspect of your life also, getting a job, getting the career that you want. And yeah, so yeah, just believe in yourself.
Yes, sir.
And college is not the be all and end all lah. Like going to US universities, yeah, it's not the be all and end all. Or going to university itself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's always. I mean, one thing that I learned from poly is that there are many different paths that you could take to get to the same place, right? And it just
Mm,
depends on how you want to. I mean, whether you have like the smarts to do it. I'm not talking about like intellect, being like having IQ, but you just have to know how things work. Right? If you know how things work, how societies are structured, what motivates people, it would
mm,
be relatively easy for you to find another path to get to the same place that you want to go to. So, I mean, being in university as well has showed me that there are many different ways to approach something, and you don't always have to do what everyone else is doing. Yeah.
Today, I'm extremely grateful and honored to be able to speak to Benson and listen to his educational journey from Nanyang Polytechnic to Cornell University. I believe we all have something to take away from his sharing. I would like to summarize some of the main points that were mentioned. When it comes to applying from Polytechnic versus JC, some advantages that a poly student might have is the autonomy to choose a wider range of extracurricular interests and participate in more internship and activities outside of school. At the same time, the poly student might also be able to have more autonomy over his or her applications, to be able to direct them in the way that they want to. For example, giving more guidance on the letters of recommendation and also applying to more universities, especially in the US. While poly students might suffer a bit in terms of the resources that they are given in the school themselves because of the lack of applicants to these US universities, they can definitely tap on a lot of external resources, and that is, of course, one of the main reasons why we're doing Y University in the first place. Another workaround that poly students can adopt is to go for standardized tests, your ACTs and your SATs, to put your academic ability into context for these admissions officers. Finally, I would like to say a big thank you for listening to this Q&A, and please let us know what you want to see next. Thank you.